All right, well, this week on Behind the Headlines, we're going to talk about the topic of bullying in the Palo Alto School District. And, you know, this is deja vu all over again. You know, in 2011, there was a case of bullying at Terman Middle School that was so severe it rose to the level of a federal investigation into the school district. Now we're back. That led to a whole rethinking of bullying policies on the district level. But here we are. There's a Jordan student whose family came to us.
Former Jordan student.
Jordan student who was experiencing bullying since January, and it was just unending. Tell us a little bit about that story and the family.
So this is a Palo Alto family, a Spanish-speaking family. The parents' first language is not English, and their son was a sixth grader at Jordan last year, and he is a special education student. And as you said, they had some incidences involving other students bullying him starting in January. They initially tried to resolve things just by talking to the other students' parents, but things continued and were escalating to the point that they started reporting to the school. And over the course of several months up through May, they felt like their concerns weren't being viewed with the same gravity, really, and they weren't getting the kind of response and help they need for their son. So they eventually took him out of school in May. And their case really illustrates how, this is a special education student, and there's a separate process that was established after the Terman case for dealing with cases of bullying involving discrimination. So it really shows that administrators and school staff are still struggling to recognize when a case involves alleged discrimination and what that should kick off in terms of a district-level investigation.
They were really unable, it seems, to stop this from happening to the student. And I mean, I see a lot of courage in the fact that the family came forward at all, because I know a lot of families may be afraid of retaliation, making things worse or what have you. But they were just very persistent, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, and they kept all documentation. They were recording meetings towards the end, and I've spoken with the mother and the father of this family. They just felt really strongly at this point that they decided to go public and bring this to us, which is how we found out about it. Just felt really strongly that they wanted to prevent this from happening to any other family because it had so disrupted their son's education and his, mental well-being, and up to the point where they're looking to pull him out of the district entirely. So.
Yeah, it really affected his mental health.
Yeah, he became suicidal at points, and they said, he had never expressed anything like that before, and so it was really clear to them that they weren't getting what they needed at school.
Let's talk a little bit about this new policy that was adopted in 2014 by the district in response to the federal investigation. It was a little bit controversial at the time because it really is a two-pronged approach, correct? One, there's one sort of process to go through if alleged bullying has something to do with a protected class or characteristics.
Right, so race or gender.
Yeah, disability.
Yeah.
And disability was a factor in the Terman case as well, and this kid is a special needs kid. And then there's the non-discriminatory bullying. But both of them kind of fall under the same umbrella in which they need to be reported to the administration, and there needs to be an investigation launched basically, immediately.
Yeah.
What happened in this case where the report went to the administrators?
So we were talking before, and it seemed like initially the student was actually, in January, another student pantsed him at school, and that could be considered sexual harassment. So that in and of itself, and the fact that he's a special education student, could have launched this district level. It's called the Uniform Complaint Procedure, which is the separate track of procedures and policies for cases involving discrimination. But it wasn't until late May when the two parents filled out this official form to start a UCP investigation that the district started one. And they also submitted a letter to the district in April after a very serious incident involving another student threatening their son with a knife at Jordan. They wrote this statement sort of documenting, here are all our concerns, the dates of things that have happened, what we've reported, who we've reported them to. And that letter clearly alleged that the bullying could have been the result of discrimination. So that also should have kicked off the UCP investigation of the district. And so it wasn't until the parents themselves filled out this form, which a parent advocate told them to do that. The district didn't tell them that they had that option. that really started the district level investigation. So what should have started really in January didn't start until May, when they had already gotten to the point of feeling like they had to pull him out of school.
Yeah. So there was the pantsing, there was the knife, and
Yeah.
then someone should have told them at some point that they could have filed a form, even though the form is not necessary.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's
some
something that we
confusion
should be
there.
really clear about, is that in cases of the of unlawful discrimination based on a protected class, upon first learning of that, any employee of the district is to immediately report that and refer it to the district office for formal investigation.
And whether it's orally or in writing,
Right.
whatever it is.
Doesn't need the
It doesn't
form.
even need to be reported. In
Yeah.
other words, a teacher could observe it, or in the case of the pantsing incident, somebody obviously became aware of that.
Yeah.
At that point, it should have immediately gone to the district under the law and been investigated. I just want to add that one of the reasons we're able to be reporting on this is the fact that once a UCP investigation is conducted, which eventually took place in this instance, a report is required to be written and provided to the victim. So in this case, the family received a written report from the district, which then they, of course, are free to provide to whoever they want, and came to you, Elena, with it. That's a big contrast to what happened in the Turman case, where in the Turman case, no investigation took place internally at the school district. It went to OCR because the family was so frustrated. OCR's report was eventually released, but there was no way for the family to come to us or come to the media and demonstrate that the district had taken a position on what had happened.
Since I wasn't here for the bullying case at Turman and the OCR controversy, I was wondering if you could talk about sort of how this case echoed that, and the policies that were put in place to address those issues, and how this showed the progress or not lack of
Well,
progress.
it's eerily similar in terms of the actual facts of the case. It was also a sixth grader, as I recall, and was a situation of ongoing and repeated bullying that the family had reported to the school, to the principal, and ultimately there became a mental health issue involved. This was a disabled, also a learning disability student. So this was a student with an IEP, and their condition, their mental health condition, worsened, and the family ultimately pulled the child out of school. So almost exactly, I mean, the actual incidents of bullying obviously were different. And what and that family ultimately went to the Office for Civil Rights, which conducted an investigation that basically concluded that the district hadn't taken the steps that they should have to remedy the bullying, to stop the bullying. There's no law that says a school district has to prevent bullying from happening. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's how they respond to it once they become aware of it that's the issue. And that became the end result of that was letters of finding by the OCR that have become now kind of well known in the community.
Yeah. So the new policy is really, in some ways, a stopgap. Part of your reporting indicated that interim steps should be taken to stop bullying, regardless. I mean, this is not a formal process. It's obvious that if someone's being harmed, then the administration should step forward. But the documentation is new, and then also just kind of the level of structure, I think, that's been put into place. Now, unfortunately, in this case, the structure wasn't followed. I mean, there's reporting deadlines, a schedule of like after 1 day it's supposed to go to the principal, after 2 days it's supposed to go to the district, after 6 that's supposed to launch an investigation, after 60 days it should be completed.
Yeah, none of these timelines were followed by the district.
I think they were just barely within the 60 days, I think, for the family filed 2 UCP complaints. One of them was actually about a special education aide at Jordan that they had also had issues with. And that investigation took, I think, slightly longer. And it's also, they are one of, we should mention, 26 UCP investigations from last year and so far this year that the district has reported in a log that's required to be public. And out of those cases, there's 9 that have taken longer than the required 60 days time limit. And only one of them was the timeline formally extended, which they can do if the complainant agrees to. So that's another issue of just, it's taking too long. These families are waiting every day for, if they pull their kid out of school to get him back into school, and just sort of hanging in the balance while the investigation goes through.
Yeah, so there were 26 cases, 3 were opened this year, 19 were resolved. Can you just break that down into what were the allegations in those cases? I think 5 were dismissed, or there were no findings.
Yeah, I think it was 5, or that they didn't result in any corrective action.
No corrective
there was
action,
one
but
that
steps
was
were
dismissed because the complaint was withdrawn. The majority of them were discrimination or harassment based on a protected class, like this student's. There are also some sexual misconduct cases, and other sort of miscellaneous allegations relating to discrimination. But the majority was discrimination and harassment based on a protected class.
And in theory, for all of those investigations that have been completed, there is a written report written by the district that should have been given to all the various complainants in those cases, which we have no idea what those say. We don't have access to them. Those are private unless the family were to come to us with them.
Okay. Are they private even if they're redacted?
Yeah, because they're not considered public records
Yeah.
under the Public Records Act because it deals with a complaint of a student.
Yeah. So one question that I have is whether or not the Board of Education was aware of this particular case, and if there's any structure in place for them to just be updated on UCPs, when they're filed, what they're filed about.
Yeah.
Because, this whole thing, developing new policy, was a really major issue for the school district. A lot of effort went into developing.
And
Still-
expense. They've
And
spent
the
a
legal
lot of
firms,
money
yeah.
to develop these policies.
Yeah, and they're frequently trumpeted at, when this topic comes up for whatever reason. You can hear the board candidates, whoever it is, just referring back to the extensive work that was done to draft and adopt these policies.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken to any of the board members today yet, so I'm unsure if they were informed about it or not. When I asked Marcus Autry, who conducted the UCP investigation for the district, he sort of insinuated that they would only be informed if it was regarding the discipline of the students involved, for incident in the knife incident, for example. If one of them was being considered, if they were going to expel that student, that would rise to the level of informing the board. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, the board actually has to vote on that in closed session.
Yeah. So, I don't think that happened in this case, but it appears there's no regular update of the UCP log, that's brought to the board on a regular basis.
Right.
I don't
and
see that.
you attend all the meetings.
I do. I don't remember seeing that in recent memory. So that seems like another thing, we talk about, or the board talks a lot about. We have to measure what matters, and if we don't pay attention to something, it's just going to fall by the wayside. And this seems like a pretty good example of that.
Yeah. No evaluation. There's a policy that's put into place, and then we don't have any idea of how it's actually working, and neither does the board.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned the Jordan aide as well. There's a complaint about someone there, and there was some action taken. It wasn't exactly discipline; it was a reprimand.
Yeah.
What happened with that aide and the who we're calling the Garcia's son, that prompted them to file the UCP on that person?
So they said that this aide at Jordan was repeatedly behaving just inappropriately with their son in class, including sort of physically grabbing his hands, and just sort of they described it as microaggressions against him. They reported this early on in the semester, and the same thing with the bullying. It sort of continued unabated throughout the year. And they also filed a UCP complaint about this aide, and it was investigated and determined that while what she did was unprofessional, because she behaved that way with all students, it was not discrimination.
So they just viewed it as a teacher corrective action.
Yeah, so basically they met with this aide, they told her, please don't do this anymore, and said that they would tell the administration to monitor her, and she's still at Jordan today, and it's unclear if this has been followed up on or not.
Okay, yeah. Another allegation from the Garcias was just the lack of communication, poor communication, disrespectful communication. And that's something that Marcus Autry, in his report of findings, he said that the actual bullying was not discriminatory. However, the communication was poor and training needed to be renewed for them. what kinds of findings did he have regarding the breakdown on the Jordan staff's part?
I don't know that he said anything really specific, but I mean, he did say he acknowledged that the family felt sort of unheard and that they felt like it wasn't until they went to the district office and brought it up to that level that any action started happening at Jordan, and their frustration with that. And he, in that letter, committed to reviewing all of these related policies with administrators at the start of the year, which I believe is something that was already required under the OCR resolution from the term and case. So
I think that's one of the things that's most troubling about this case is that so much effort has been put into, as was pointed out earlier, training and documents and making sure that everybody that is in an administrative position at these schools knows what to do. It completely broke down in this case. And I think the surprising thing about the Autry report, at least as you reported on it, was that it didn't go into these places where the policies weren't followed, which would have been much more helpful to the district if he had outlined, here's where this should have become a UCP complaint investigated by the district, which probably should have happened back in January when the pantsing incident occurred. It certainly should have happened when the parents submitted their written complaint in April that said, we believe our student has been harassed and bullied because of his status as a disabled student. So there were all these places where the wrong decisions were made or no decisions were made, and that wasn't really addressed in his response to the family. Is that's correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would have been terrific to be able to have a point by point, well, this is what should have happened, this is where we went astray, or this is why it didn't happen. Right. I think that was one of the kind of frustrating things as you and I were working on this story and trying to dig a little bit deeper. Every time we received some information from the district that didn't quite, answer a question, we had the discussions of, okay, well, why specifically did they think this wasn't discriminatory? Yeah. He was a special needs kid. What justification or what kind of thinking went on in order to come to the conclusions, either on the Jordan administration staff or Autry's part, and it just seemed like we were trying to get to specifics, and it was a little challenging.
Well, and I think his response, as quoted in Elena's story, is similar to this response we've gotten in past cases, where the focus, the person at the district wants to shift the focus from the policies and how the policies were followed, and wants instead to talk about their concern for the student. And that's what you see in the quotes from Autry. So, well, we were really focused on trying to deal with the bullying, and of course, the family says that was unsuccessful. But these policies and deadlines and so forth and timelines, a lot of effort has been put into creating them. And if they're not going to be followed, then what do we do now? Do we just start over, or what?
Yeah. I mean, one would hope that the discussion will just be starting again with the district, that the board will take it up, or there'll be some sort of means put into place for finding out what did happen in this case and what the district could do. The family has decided to take their son out of, he was reassigned to, transferred to JLS. Correct, he's now not in the school district?
He hasn't been in school in a few weeks. They transferred him to JLS at the start of this school year because of the issues at Jordan, and were sort of promised, you'll start anew, everything will be great there. And within about a week, there was more bullying at JLS, and I think they were just so frustrated. So they've pulled him out of school, and they're hoping to transfer him out of the district. And they are working with the school district to do that. So,
is there any risk or possibility that the Office for Civil Rights would get involved in a case like this? And did the family did you ask them about whether they'd considered an OCR complaint? Because this is one of those situations where it certainly would. Other families have gone to OCR directly when they've been frustrated. Does that come up?
I didn't talk with them about that. I didn't ask them, so I'm not sure. I don't know if they were aware of that as an option. I would bet that people might read the story and tell them that. I know that they've been working with the CIC, which is the parent advocate group that supports special education families, but I'm not sure.
They did file a police report this week. I think you
Last
said,
week, about the special education aid for a similar reason of they don't want her to be in the classroom anymore if that's how she's still acting with students and students who really need the most support.
Yeah, yeah.
Before we sign off, and
Sure.
I think it's important for us to make to clarify what the school district isn't able to talk to us about. This was clear in your story, but the district is in a bit of a difficult situation because they have to adhere to federal laws, privacy laws, that make it so that they can't get into an individual student's case. And so if we had come to the school district and asked them about this case, they would have had to say, we really can't tell you anything about it. And that's really their obligation, is to say we can't tell you anything about it. What made this different was the fact that, like in the Terman case, the family came to us and provided us with supporting documentation that seemed credible to us and in part included the district's report.
Right.
And so that then gave us the ability to go to the district and at least ask about some of the policy questions, even though they continue to not be able to talk about any of the details regarding this particular case. So there may be more information that if the district had the ability to communicate about, that we would learn about, but we have to go with what we have, and that
They are
was,
somewhat hamstrung.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the story this week. Everyone can check it out in the newspaper or online. If you have thoughts on this story, you can leave your comments below, or you can go to paloaltoonline.com/square to comment on our town square. Elena's on Twitter, so you can also follow her. Elena, what's your handle?
At Kadvany, which is my
Okay.
last name and first initial.
All right, and I'm at Jocelyn Dong. That's it for this week. Please follow the news at paloaltoonline.com or on Twitter at Palo Alto Weekly. This is a wrap for this week. Thanks.